Hello, everybody. Back today for another Facebook Live to talk about how to recycle, repurpose, reuse, make more out of your content that you're now creating after the last two. Welcome to all of the people watching this on the replay. Thanks for finding this video and for joining in and watching. I hope you'll find it useful. Looking forward to sharing with you one of my absolute favorite topics, how to get more mileage out of the content you're taking time to create. So the first week, we talked about why it was important to create your own content. And the basic thing is, my favorite quote about that, if all you ever do is share other people's stuff, other people's content, then why does anybody need to follow you? They're not getting to know you. They're not learning how you do business and what your values are and how you would handle situations. So it's very important that while you're sharing other people's content, you're also sharing things that show your own way of doing business and your own way of thinking. So that was the first week. And then the second week, we talked about, what did we talk about the second week? The first week we talked about why you need to do it. Oh my goodness. I've totally blanked on the topic of the second video. But this week, we are going to talk about how to take that content that you've created and how to stretch it out, how to make it into something more, and how this can save you time in the long run. So if you create an epic piece of content that you're really, really proud of, that's what we talked about, the different types of content and how you can, what types of content you can create for your business. Whew, brain fart. So if you've created really good content for your business, you don't want to waste that by only using it once. You want to find more and different ways to use that content. So today I'm going to walk you through an article that I wrote, an infographic that I made, and give you a checklist that you can use to help you find ways to take that content that you've spent lots of time creating, whether it's an ebook, a video, an infographic, and find other ways to use the same content so that you're saving yourself time and there's some consistency and you're just getting more bang for your buck. You're going further with the time that you've spent to create that content. So this is one of the things that I love to do. So first of all, let's see if I can give you the link to the original article. So this is one of the things that I love to do. So, first of all, I got to turn that off. I can give you the link to the original article. Sorry about that. Had a little duplication there. I'm just going to give it a second to see if it duplicates again. Sorry about that. A little duplication there. Just going to give it a second to see if it duplicates again. Okay, I think we're good. So I created an article on my blog. If you go to twerp.ca/recycle-content infographic. Okay, now I've got it. Recycle-content infographic. You will find the original article that I wrote with the big, long, pretty, beautiful infographic that my designer has created. So if you like to see things in a visual format, definitely check that out. I will put the links in the comments afterwards. It's one of those things I can't do the way that I'm doing these Facebook Lives right now. And so I'm going to walk you through that. So basically, recycling your content, repurposing it is a really good way to stretch out your hard work. Once you've created that epic piece of content, whether it's your blog post or your video, you want to make the most use of it by using it in different forms and putting it on different platforms, different social media in different ways to attract more people. So you've written a blog post, let's say, but it might be the video version that attracts one particular group of people to your blog, to that content, to get them on your list. So you need to think about how can you take the same piece of content that you've created and turn it into something different without starting over. So it's really simple to do. Let's say you start with a blog post. I highly recommend blogging for most of my clients. They don't all listen to my advice, but I do recommend blogging. It is a incredibly easy, fast way to do several things. Improve your search engine optimization, your SEO. So if you're trying to get your website to show up near the top of Google searches, a proper blog on your website can really bring you up there quite quickly. It can be a great way to answer questions for your clients and to pre-qualify people. So my number one referral source right now in my business is actually Google search. It's my website. I ask every person that calls me how they came to call me. Why did they call me and not somebody else? And sometimes it's, so-and-so told me I should talk to you. But I'm going to say 90% of the time, it's people who searched on Google for social media consultant Halifax, and my website is up there. So the reason my website is up there is in large part due to the work that I put into my blog. So I start with a blog post. I'll write a blog post with, let's say, all of these tips that I'm going to give you today. And that's one really good piece of content. And I try to do it every week. I've fallen off the wagon a little bit here right now due to some personal circumstances, but I try to do it every week. If you can do it every other week, that's fine too. At the minimum, you need to blog once a month. But let's take that blog. What can we do with that blog post to get more mileage out of it? Well, first of all, you want to break it down into some tweets. So you're not just going to put your blog up on your website. You need to tweet that out. If you don't tell people that your blog is there, how are they ever going to come read it? You have to let people know that you've put that content on your website. They're not out there going, hey, I wonder if Anita's written anything new lately. I better go check her website, especially when you're new and people don't even know that you have that blog. So it's really important that you're going to link to your new blog post every time you write a new blog post on Twitter, on Facebook, on LinkedIn, Reddit, wherever it is that you and your ideal clients are hanging out. You want to put a link out there. So you're going to take your blog post and you're going to look for 2 or 3 or 4 really tweetable sentences, almost like quotes that people could use from your article, or the main topics, or maybe it's the subheadings from your article. You put those in a tweet and you linked back to your blog post, and now you've got 3 or 4 tweets and 3 or 4 posts for each of your social networks. So right there alone, you've created 3 times the content out of one blog post. Now, don't forget to have the graphics to go with it. So you're going to have some kind of graphic that is on top of your blog post. You can use that graphic to go with those tweets and posts to get people to come read it. Now, the other thing you can do is you can create even more graphics from your blog post. So maybe those 3 or 4 tweetables, or those 3 or 4 topic areas, maybe you can turn those into separate graphics. Maybe they become memes. Maybe they become tips. So with this blog post, the infographic that I'm talking about today on recycling, I actually took each one of these tips on how to recycle your content, and I tweeted them out, but I also created tip graphics that I could actually use on Instagram. So people didn't have to link through to the blog post to get the tip. They would see the tip right on Instagram. So I created all of these, 16, I think, out of this infographic, and that was 16 different posts that I did once a week on Instagram. So now we've got 3 or 4 tweets, and now we've got 16 Instagram posts. But that's not it. Now you're going to take those graphics that you've created for each of these tweetables or each of these tips or topic areas, and now you're going to tweet those out as well. And I'm not suggesting that you do all of this the first day or in the first week. This is how you stretch out your content over time. It's not about fitting all of this stuff in right away to get everybody to your blog post in a week. You want people to continue to come back to this evergreen content on a regular basis. So these tweets and these graphics, they go out. Well, the tips for Instagram, for example, I put them out once a week for 16 weeks. That was 4 months that I was pointing people back to this epic piece of content that I created on my website. So it spreads things out, and it gives you content for each of your networks. So you've got your tweets and posts, linking people, just telling them why to come read your blog, alerting them to the new blog. Then you're going to create some graphics that you can use for, tip of the day or quotes out of that. And that on some networks will point people back to your website. Don't forget that if you write a blog post, you can email it to people. Now, there's a couple of different ways to do that. If you sign up to receive my blog by email, it's actually completely separate from my newsletter. So I have 2 subscriptions, one to get my monthly email newsletter about social media tips, and one to get just my blog posts. My blog posts are not my newsletter. They're 2 separate things. So you can get people to sign up to get your blog posts by email, and you can include a blog post in your newsletter. So my newsletter has several different sections. One of those sections is the blog post from the past month that I think is most useful or most relevant to my audience. So it's the one that I want to point people to make sure everybody saw that as much as possible. So there's 2 ways that I'm getting email content out of something that I've written on my blog. Okay. Now, depending on what kind of blog post you've written, if it's full of steps or full of statistics, or it's a very long list of things that people can do or check, make an infographic. Infographics are really, really popular, and they're a lot of fun to have as part of your marketing on social media. I have a great graphic designer who does all of my stuff, so don't think that I'm doing any of this pretty graphic design by myself. Marcy does all of my graphic design, and this was one of the first ones that we did, the recycling content infographic. So we took a blog post that I'd written on all the ways that you can recycle your content, and we put it into an infographics format and used the recycling theme. So the recycling theme that we all learned in school, why we need to reduce, reuse, recycle. We've got the arrows, we've got graphics here showing how the earth, the cycle of water on the earth, how water gets recycled. So it's all very symbolic. And your infographic doesn't have to be that complicated. You can use Canva to create really simple step-by-step infographics that you can do yourself. Or if you've got a little bit of money to spend on having somebody do it professionally, have one created. But this can make a lot of information really easy to digest for people. So consider whether or not your blog post works as an infographic. Okay, so I've given you 4 tips already, 4 different ways to recreate your content, to repurpose it. If you think this is valuable, I would love it if you could click on the share button and share this with your friends on Facebook so that they have a chance to see how they can save time on their content as well. Unless, of course, you're trying to keep this a secret just for yourself. But don't do that. Everybody needs to save some time on social media. So please give me a little share there. And if you've got questions about all of this, please put them in the comments. As soon as this is done, I'm going to come back and I'm going to answer all those questions. All right. So after you've thought about the infographic, the next thing I want you to think about is a slide share. So remember those graphic tips, those little boxes of graphics from the article that you created, and in my case I had 16 tips. Well, why not put those 16 different tips into a PowerPoint presentation and upload that to SlideShare? So SlideShare it's actually owned by LinkedIn now. But it's an online library of PowerPoint presentations, basically. And you can create it in PowerPoint and upload it to your SlideShare account. And then what I want you to do is I want you to tweet out that you have a SlideShare with 16 tips on how to recycle your content. Or I want you to tweet out that you have created a slide video with those 16 tips. That's my next thing. So create the PowerPoint. You can then put that on SlideShare. You can embed the SlideShare on your website. You can add it to your LinkedIn profile. You can link to it from anything that you're linking with. So Twitter, Facebook, you can put it on Instagram. You can put it in your email signature that you have 16 tips for recycling your content and give them a link to the SlideShare. Or you can take that PowerPoint and create a looping video so it automatically forwards through the slides. You can even find ways to make this with a voiceover of you going through those items. Create a video from those 16 tips. Now, these are a couple of things I haven't got to doing yet with this particular topic area. These are things I still have to do. And this infographic is something I created over a year ago. So this is how I'm stretching out my content. I'm not doing it all at once. I'm doing it bit by bit. So I started by writing the article, then I did the infographic, then I did the tips and the newsletters, the emails, and put it out on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook every week for 16 weeks. Then I took a bit of a break on the recycling. I'm still sending out tweets to get people to come look at this infographic, but now I'm ready to start talking about recycling content again. So today, here's my next tip. Can you create a webinar or host a live stream about this topic that goes through your article? Maybe it talks about it in a different format. Maybe you're giving more information than you could write. Or maybe you're explaining things, maybe you're showing things in a way that you couldn't illustrate in all of the other things that you've looked at. So my next tip, a webinar or a live stream. I love doing the live streams. I for some reason, don't like doing online webinars. So here's my live stream. This is tip number 8 or 9, I think we're on. And then now I've got a video created. So I've created this live stream video. What do you think I'm going to do? I'm going to start linking people to the video where I'm talking about how to recycle content. So not only have I got all of these graphics created and I've done slide shares and slide videos, now I've got a live video of me producing exactly what I'm talking about. So now I can tweet out a link to the video. I can embed the video on my website and maybe tweet a link there. Every place that you put these pieces is a new piece of content for Facebook or Twitter. So just because you have been tweeting out a link to your infographic or your blog post, hey, tomorrow you can tweet out a link to the video, same content, same topic, different format. It's going to attract different people. So every place that you put these, you want to start linking people to those. All right? So create a video. Now, I've got the video from today's live stream that I'll be using, but the other thing you could do is actually create a more professionally produced style video, you can do it with your phone. You could do it live stream in a private area and then maybe edit it if you want. But you could have it with, you could have your slides showing up beside your face, or you could just do a voiceover of your slides and explain the content to your audience. So either a live video or a professionally produced video or a webinar. Here's another way, all that content that maybe you spent hours researching or hours preparing, now you've got another way to present it. Next tip, can you turn this into some kind of downloadable resource? You probably can. So today, my downloadable resource for you, if you sign up for my newsletter, is a checklist that you can go through every time you've created a video or every time you've created an epic blog post or an infographic, and you can go through this list and say, okay, now how can I repurpose this? Can I do this? All right, maybe you even keep track. I've done this, 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 and this. Here are the other things I need to think about. How can I take this content and do it in this format? So that's my downloadable resource, created from all of the work that I've done prior to this on this topic. Do you see how this is starting to come together? You just need to think about it in slightly different ways and start reusing the content in different formats. Something I haven't done yet is to create a quiz or a poll. So you'll see all the time that people are creating quizzes for Facebook. You know, what type of content recycler are you? And maybe I come up with 3 or 4 different names for the type of content. Geez, this is a good idea I just had right on the spot. So maybe I create 4 different types, personalities of recyclers. Maybe there's somebody who once in a while puts out a tweet about something that's evergreen. Maybe there's somebody who only recycles content and never does anything new. Maybe there's somebody who does new content and only does a few things. And maybe there's somebody who can't find enough ways to recycle their content. So maybe I create interesting names for those personalities. I use an app to create the quiz, and now I'm linking to the quiz on my social media. I'm getting people to do the quiz, and then they have to sign up to my email newsletter to get the checklist or get the infographic or get the resource that I'm providing with that. That was a really good idea. I love when I can brainstorm really good ideas for myself. I love to brainstorm ideas for other people, but when I can brainstorm an idea for myself, that's a win. Friday is off to a good start today. Now here's a tip I have not taken advantage of yet, and this one actually came from my friend Natasha Marchuka, who used to live here in Halifax, and she's now out in California. So hey to Natasha, if you are listening in on the replay. She's a voiceover coach, and she suggests that you actually add an audio version of your blog or your content to your blog page. So after I've written a blog post, I could use some software to read the blog post so that people who have a vision impairment could click on the buttons and they could listen to my content instead of having to read it, or instead of having a Google software read it in a funny voice, or instead of having to ask somebody else to come read it for them. I would be providing it in my voice with my intonations and my personality. So that's another way you could do it. And then you can also promote that on all of your social networks as well, that you have the audio version of this content for people who are visually impaired, or people who want to download it and listen to it in the car if it happens to be really long. So you could upload this to a podcast type system so that people could listen to it while they're commuting or in the car or on the bus or while they're out for a walk. There's lots of reasons why people might want to download your audios and listen to them elsewhere. So all of that was starting from a blog post. But it doesn't really matter which piece of content you do first. It's a big circle. You can take whatever you started with, chunk it, piece it, group it, make new content. So let's look at it, for example, if we started with a video. So another friend of mine who blogs is Steve Foran. The Gratitude at Work is his new branding. So look him up. He has great video blogs that he puts out every week about how to be gratitudinous, how to be grateful for things in your life and how to have a more grateful attitude. So he starts with a video. Now here are some ways that he could remix that using the principles that I've just talked about. He could blog it. So he's created a video. Maybe he's got fans who don't have access to really good Wi-Fi or really good internet services, and they need to read it instead. So he could be writing out, transcribing what he said in his blog, putting that on a written blog page, which is good for Google. Google needs to see the actual words. So it's good for your search engine optimization. And then he can actually email it, and he can have email subscribers getting the video version, and he can have email subscribers getting the written version, depending on what they prefer. So he's blogged it. Then he could chop it up. He can chop up his video into smaller snippets. Maybe, I bet he has them, and I bet it would be fun to watch. Maybe he chops up several videos and remixes them into blooper reels. Or maybe he takes his favorite one-liners from each of 5 videos and remixes those into a highlight reel. And then maybe each of those clips on their own becomes a tweet. And maybe the highlight reel you tweet out. So it's all about taking the content and chopping it up, remixing it, using it in new ways, grouping it together. Even if, and okay, so let me back up a bit. So we've started with a video in this case. We've chopped it up. Take each of those pieces and put those on Twitter and on Instagram and on Facebook. The smaller pieces, use them as teasers to get people to come watch the entire video. Now, if your video blog is only a minute or 3 minutes, it might not be worth chopping it up. But if you're doing videos that are longer, then you're probably going to want to have some kind of teaser to get people to come watch it. So you could do that. Then you can take those chopped up bits and maybe you turn those into, if it's a tip, for example, turn that tip into a graphic. So now we're back up to the top of the line where we're creating tip graphics that can go on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn. And it's not a video, it's the graphic with the same content. So now you're putting a picture of the food that you're creating on your blog post today and a tip about how to properly store asparagus. I don't know. So instead of having the video tip, now you've got the video tip that goes out once a month, and every other week you've got a graphic tip. So it's going to attract different people. They're going to find different people on the networks. So same content, different format. So think about all of these things. It doesn't matter what type of content you start with. So I'll give you one more example. Let's say you've been putting out tips every Tuesday. Tip Tuesday is really popular. So you've been putting out a food tip. So for my friend Trish, who's a great cook and is teaching people how to cook so that they can save time and money and be healthier, Teaspoon Cooking, if you want to look her up, she puts out cooking tips once in a while. She could take those cooking tips that she's putting out maybe as maybe she's doing it as a graphic because they're easy to do. So she's making a quick cooking tip on how to store asparagus in your fridge with a picture of asparagus and just to store asparagus properly, do this, this, and this. One little graphic. She puts that out on all her networks. After a few weeks, she probably has 8 or 10 let's say vegetables that she's teaching people to store. So now she can create a blog post with each of those graphics and say, 10 tips for storing vegetables for longevity in your fridge. And then maybe after that blog post, maybe after she's got 20 tips, she creates an infographic on 20 ways to make your vegetables last longer in your fridge. And then maybe she takes all of those graphics and turns them into a slide share. And then turns the slide share into a video and adds the video to all of her networks. And then maybe after she's collected all kinds of these tips, she decides to have a live stream or a webinar on how to save yourself money and keep your vegetables fresher in your refrigerator or in your home, because they don't all have to be stored in the fridge. So now she's gone full circle, but she started with creating these tip graphics and then turned it into videos and turned it into infographics and blogs and so on. So that's all just vegetables, let's say. But now maybe she's talking about pantry goods. So she does how to keep your brown sugar from going hard in the pantry. So then she does a whole series on pantry goods and does all of the same things. At the end of the year, she's got 52 different tips and 5 different videos and all this stuff that she's created. Now maybe she's doing top 10 tips of 2017, and it can pick and choose from all the different little series that she did. So one is on brown sugar and one is on asparagus, and she picks maybe the top most popular ones that were on her website. So it's really easy to look at your content from this perspective and recycle it, chop it up, reuse it. And once you've done that, once you've created all these little bits and pieces, there are some tools that you can use to help you manage all this so that you're not constantly saying, okay, when was the last time I tweeted that? Or when was the last time I posted about this? And that's next week's topic. Next week, I'm going to share with you all of my favorite tools for scheduling content so that you can save time and you can get your content out there on a more regular basis and be more consistent about sharing your evergreen content. Because once you've done this process, once you've gone through and you've taken one blog and turned it into, let's say, 50 different pieces of content about that topic, you want to make sure that you're getting all of those pieces out there on a regular basis. So you need to have some tools in place. And I talk a lot about Hootsuite, but that's not the only tool that's out there. So I want to next week share with you lots of those tools that you can use to help get this content going and get people constantly coming to your website to look for more content. So that's all of my favorite stuff about recycling content. I want you to think about how to get more out of a blog or a video, or even if it's just a tip. If you're creating tips every week, how can you group those together to get more mileage out of the work that you've done to curate those tips? So if you found this live stream really valuable, if it gave you some ideas on how you can stretch your content, please share it with your friends. Sharing is caring, and I would love to share these tips with as many people as possible because I know that small businesses are struggling to get their own content out there, and providing your own content and your own views is really important for making social media marketing work for you. So once you've taken the time to curate really good content or to create your own content, I want you to figure out ways to get it out there more often and bring more people in to see your stuff. So please share this with everybody. And your freebie today is the printable checklist for everything we've talked about today that will remind you all of the different ways that you can recycle your content. And today you can go get that at twerp.ca/recycling checklist. No hyphens. twerp.ca/recycling checklist. So I'm going to turn this off. I'm going to come in and put those links for everything in the comments. So if you have a problem finding them, they'll be right there. I want to thank you for tuning in for my third Facebook Friday Live, and hope you found this really useful. I'd love to have your comments. If you're not comfortable making them publicly, if something confused you and you want to private message me, I would love to have your private feedback as well. So thanks for listening, and next Friday I'll be back for one last Facebook Live to talk about tools that will help you recycle your content and save you lots of time in getting your information out there. Thanks everybody. I will see you next Friday.